right. Thanks for tuning in. Here it is, Wednesday, September 8th, 2021. I'm Sky Walker, and this is Radio Memories. Today, our special guest is radio legend. I know he's very humble. He just considers himself radio veteran and voiceover guru, Jeff McNEAL. I've known this man since I was 17 years old when he was brought into KHTZ 97 to do 7 to midnight. I was doing the overnight shift from midnight to 5 a.m., and we became close friends. You had to become close friends in those days, especially working in the mortuary crematorium at 338 Southwestern Avenue that housed the radio station, formerly 10Q. And that's at that point, Greater Media was building us new studios on Wilshire Boulevard. It was very scary to be there all alone. So we all kind of hung out together, and there was a lot of camaraderie at the station at that point. And he has a very talented guy. He's got a long career in radio, and he has agreed to come on Radio Memories and share his stories. And joining us from his home studio in Temecula, California, radio legend Jeff McNEAL. Jeff, it is so good to see you. It's been such a long time.
I think you're the first and only person who's ever referred to me as a legend. So,
oh my goodness, you are a radio legend.
I thank you for that. We're getting off on the right foot. No, I'm not.
Oh, yes, you are.
No,
I've known you and I are just 1 year apart.
Yeah,
and you and I worked together at KHTZ 97. We were kids. Yeah. You had already been at a radio station. I got lucky and got started on 10Q. But you were, and that was in the middle of the night on Sunday morning when nobody was listening. But you actually, this man was born with pipes, and we always knew he was going to be just a big success. So what's going on in Jeff McNEAL's life now?
Right now, I'm doing voiceover for a living, which I've been doing exclusively for the last close to 20 years.
It was so cool when you were doing NBC4.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, for 9 years.
Because I would always go, hey, there's Jeff.
Yeah.
It was just cool to because you and I were real close, early in years. And so it was always cool to hear you.
Well, I didn't even know you were aware that I was doing that at the time. So, so thank you. Yeah, that was the best single gig I think I've ever had. I mean, I was there for 9 years, and we. Oh,
can I tell? I don't mean to interrupt, but there's a funny story.
Sure.
When you and I were at KHTZ 97,
right,
and the station was beginning to get really boring. Remember, you're doing 7 to midnight.
Yeah.
And you confided in me. You were the only one to confide in me. You said,
"Oh, what's coming?" What did I say?
I got a gig at Disco 102.7 KIIS-FM, but don't tell anyone.
Oh.
And I said, okay. And to me, I didn't care.
Right.
I was just a kid. I didn't know what that meant, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't know that we couldn't do that. That's how young and naive I was.
Oh, as far as telling people you got another job while you're still working at one, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because KHTZ wasn't a union gig.
Right.
And it was so scrambled, and we were in that horrible, 338 Southwestern Avenue wasn't the old, they had taken the old 10Q equipment out, and we were working with all that crappy equipment.
Yeah.
And
the orange shag carpeting on the walls.
Yeah. But when you had got the gig, at KIIS-FM, you asked me not to tell anybody, and I didn't.
Yeah.
And that went on for months.
Was I working on both simultaneously?
Yes, you were working weekends at KIIS. At Disco 102.7 KIIS-FM. During that time, they changed it to dance radio, KIIS-FM.
Yeah. That was a very strange time in radio.
And nobody notices at KHTZ.
That's so funny.
Nobody notices because I think K-Hits was so scrambled at that point.
Yeah.
They were in the transition of becoming a very soft adult contemporary station. Yeah. And you had complained about it. Pat Evans, the jock before you, had complained about it, went back to KHJ. Yeah. Nobody liked the station.
Yeah.
And you were doing it for a paycheck, and you said, it's not a lot of money, so I really don't care.
Right.
And I think you finally resigned from KIIS. I don't think anybody ever found out.
Yeah, I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I left before I could get fired because I saw that coming. My stint at KIIS was just a very brief little blip. I had been at KUTE 102.
Right.
In fact, that was the first station I worked at in LA. I got hired by Bill Stevens to do weekends and to fill in at KUTE 102. Right. Which was at the time was a pretty big station. It was doing great with the disco stuff, and it had good numbers.
Very popular. Very popular.
Yeah, it was a really interesting.
And great jingles.
I don't remember those, but anyway, there's a lot I forget. But it was a good staff, and it was run by Inner City Broadcasting, and I remember at the time even thinking it was odd because Inner City Broadcasting was a Black-owned corporation. All of the officers were African American, and
they also owned the AM KGFJ here in LA.
I don't know if I was aware of that or not at the time. Probably was, but I forgot. But I remember it struck me as so odd that all of the jocks, except for one on the radio station, were white. Lee Bailey was the only African American on the air at KUTE 102. I remember thinking, even then, I thought, this seems weird. But, I wasn't going to argue it because I was able to work. But so Bill Stevens is the one who gave me my first shot in LA. I was 19 years old, and I was working in Port Hueneme, a.k.a. Oxnard. Port Hueneme sounds so much better than Oxnard, at KC 152. It's a 50,000 watt clear channel AM station. When I say clear channel, I don't mean the conglomerate. I mean
not the company.
What Clear Channel used to mean, yeah. And
the frequency.
Yeah.
Clear channel frequency. Yeah.
And I had I had a lot more ambition than talent at that point. And you'll like this story. I really wanted to work. I loved listening to KFI. I listened to Eric Chase, Paul Christie. And I loved that station. And I actually called John Rook from my apartment in Ventura. I said, "Hi, Mr. Rook. My name's Jeff McNEAL, and I just want to let you know I'm going to be sending you an air check. I hope you get a chance to listen to it and consider me for maybe some part-time work, if nothing else." And he goes, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm working in Oxnard at KC." When he said, "Well, why should I even bother listening to an air check with an Oxnard postmark when I can get so-and-so from Dallas or so-and-so from Chicago or blah, 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 all these." And so I said, in my cocky young arrogance, I said, "Well, if you don't even have enough objectivity to listen to my air check, how do you know I couldn't kick ass on all those guys?" And he just kept like, who is this? As he hung up the phone. I called up KUTE 102, talked to Bill Stevens, very nice guy, and he didn't hire me, but he listened to my air checks and critiqued them. And I remember him saying, "You got a little bit of bubble in your," because I was kind of doing a little puking thing, KUTE 102. No, don't do that. Don't talk out of your throat, talk out of your diaphragm, blah, 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 blah. I learned and I developed and I improved. And I kept sending him air checks, not bugging him for a job, but just say, "Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to help me out here, help me improve, so thank you." So after a few months of that, he said, "I think I've got something for you. You can put you to work weekends and some weekend shifts." And I thought, wow, thank you so much. And that was a union gig. So even weekends and fill was pretty good money for a 19-year-old kid.
Any union gig was always good.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, I went to work part-time at KUTE 102. And while I was there was this huge cataclysmic upheaval when inner city broadcasting decided to bring in Frankie Crocker from their station WBLX in New York, where he was #1 and huge. They were going to bring him to LA, and he was going to make Q102 explode. What they didn't understand, and they never factored in, is that New York and LA are so polar opposite.
Night and day.
Yeah, there's just a whole different vibe. And what works in New York isn't going to work in LA, and vice versa. Scott Shannon was probably one of the few exceptions to that rule when he went.
And not really. He wasn't an exception because it didn't work. Pirate radio didn't work. And for that very same reason.
Okay. You know better than I would, because I never listened, and
you can really tell when somebody's perception of LA and somebody's understanding of LA, and it's a complete difference. KIIS-FM had a great understanding of Southern California.
Sure did, yeah.
KKHR did not have an understanding of LA. It didn't sound like a Southern California radio station. It did sound like a packaged radio station. Okay, put it in the oven, hit 3 minutes, and voila, here's your radio station.
Yeah.
Pirate radio didn't sound like a Southern California radio station at all.
Yeah.
And so once again, I digress. Sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. I was just going to say, so while I was at Q102, they brought in Frankie Crocker, and he was like Darth Vader personified. He'd walk into the room, and the temperature would drop 10 degrees. He was a very intimidating presence.
Yeah.
And remember being at a staff meeting, and all the jocks who had been there for years and years hated him, couldn't stand him, because he was making them do things differently the way he didn't want to do it. He thought he knew what the station needed, and they just were opposed, and it was just a big mess. So the jocks kind of mutinied and tried to do an end run around him to get him fired. And I remember a day a memo came out that said, meeting about the program director, or something to that effect. The guys all thought that Frankie Crocker was resigning or had been kicked out, and they brought in Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it was a big party, and everyone was eating and laughing and drinking, and oh boy, yeah, ding dong, the witch is dead. Walks in, everybody down the hall. So we go into the prize the prize closet. It was another office that they put all the prizes in. So we're sitting around, and he says, Chris Roberts, Lee Bailey, da-da-da-da-da, Bill, you're done. You can go. And we thought, the rest of us thought, oh my God, we're all getting fired. What had just happened? He had just fired them, these full-time guys, in front of everybody. Just unceremoniously, you're done. He took Lon Thomas, who had been doing PM Drive, and made Lon Thomas his board op in the morning. Imagine what that does to your psyche, your ego. You're in radio, you're doing afternoon drive. Now you're going to run this guy's board in the morning. He took Bill Stevens, who had been doing mornings, put him on the all-night shift. And Bill Stevens was the program director. Now he was on the all-night shift. So he made me, at the tender age of 19, production director, which I thought, oh, terrific, good. This meant I'd dub the spots, I'd voice the spots. And what they didn't realize is if I voiced the spots, they had to pay me union scale for doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
When they found out that, they thought, oh, well, no, we can't have you voicing the spots. You can just run the controls and push the buttons. And I thought, okay, this isn't what I signed up for. So I quit, and I went to KIIS-FM. Mike Wagner hired me to do part-time and fill in there. So I started working at KIIS-FM at that point in 1979. Well, about a month or two later, I get a call from Frankie's assistant. She says, Frankie would like to meet you, would like to talk to you. So what about? And she said, well, I think he wants to offer you a full-time position. I said, really? So sure enough, Frankie Crocker hired me to do a full-time shift because he had just fired another jock and he was shorthanded. I think he put me on the evening shift then. I was doing 7 to midnight or something. So that was my first full-time thing in LA. Eventually, the mutiny succeeded. Frankie Crocker was out. Bill Stevens was back as program director. I'd always stayed on friendly terms with him, even though he'd been humiliated by this whole episode of being mornings in PD, and now he's doing the all-night shift. They were trying to force him out. And I found myself doing all nights for a while. So now I'm back, I'm back in my
and
place.
During this time, how do you slip into KHTZ?
Gene Knight from KHTZ, the greener.
Right.
He never knew him. I never spoke to him. I had no idea. He called me and he said, hey, I was listening to you on Q102 and I liked what you did. And I noticed you're not doing the evening shift anymore. Or, we could really use a guy like you over at KHTZ. And if you like, I'd be happy to talk you up to Bobby Rich. And I went, wow, well, yeah, thank you so much. That was singularly the nicest thing that anybody has ever done for me in this business.
What a nice stranger. Guy.
Yeah, totally. He didn't know me. He didn't know if I was a jerk. He just knew that he liked what I was doing and wanted to lend a hand if he could. So I left Q102 and I went to KHTZ and loved Bobby Rich. He was a great PD. Great. Enjoyed every moment, and he treated me nice. I remember the first few weeks I was there, I'd see Art, Charlie Tuna in the hall, and I grew up listening to Charlie Tuna, and I was like, I idolized the guy, but he just walked by me and not really say anything or pay any attention, and I remember feeling a little uncomfortable, a little awkward about that.
The thing with Charlie is he was always in his own world.
Okay.
And you had to know Charlie to realize that.
Well,
I didn't know that till way later in years.
Okay. Well, I never knew that until you just told me. But after a few weeks of this kind of like being ignored, all of a sudden I'm in the production room one day or something, and he looks up and he goes, "Hi, guy." And I go, "Oh, hi." And so we just started talking, and then everything was cool. Everything opened up, and I was one of the guys. So that made me feel really good. Well, anyway, that station, as you mentioned already, was going through a lot of changes. It was in the former mausoleum on Western Avenue, which was a scary as hell place to be at night when everybody left. And
it was a mortuary crematorium.
Yeah. And
it was never torn down.
Right.
The crematorium was still intact.
Yeah.
Below.
And the embalming slab was used as the conference table for, place to embalm people, and this nice marble slab. Well, that makes a good desk. Let's leave it. Just put some office chairs around.
This is what we were doing in the 70s. Yes.
Yeah. And then Bobby got thrown out, and he got fired for whatever reason. And Jim Connolly.
Well, because they kept softening and softening and softening and softening the format to the point where we were no longer playing any top 40 music. We were playing
I remember
lots of Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah.
And even you were complaining at that point, because I think you said, God, if I have to play Sounds of Silence one more time, I think I'm going to shoot myself.
You remember this stuff a lot better than I do.
Oh my God! Because at that point, Mike Wagner was making KIIS transition from more of a disco to more of a mainstream top 40, because you guys were starting to play "Don't Stand So Close to Me."
Yeah.
The last time I had heard you were playing Kano, "I'm Ready," and now you're playing "Don't Stand So Close to Me." So it's starting to transition. He's pulling away from that disco sound, and it was starting to sound good.
Yeah.
And compared to KHTZ, I wanted to go to KIIS so bad.
It was a really interesting place to work, and I spent 3 years there total, doing weekends and fill. And during that 3 years, I think we went through 6 different PDs and a lot of different format changes. But it was a very interesting and dynamic place to be. I was there working one weekend when Rick Dees walked in for the first time with his box of carts to set up because they had just hired him. So it was kind of neat being there for the beginning of all that. But so KHTZ, it was changing. They moved the studios to Wilshire or whatever it was, behind the Purple Onion or whatever it was. And nice new studios. But anyway, Bobby left. Jim was elevated to PD. And I just wasn't getting a good vibe from Jim. He'd been a really nice guy to me when he was music director. And he became PD and something changed. I didn't know what, but I just had a very uneasy feeling and felt, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be here long. I think he wants to make some changes. So I called up Mike Wagner at KIIS-FM. He said, yeah, come on, I got something for you. I said, great. So that's what happened there.
I want to get to, how does SoCal boy go to San Francisco to go to Northern California?
Yeah.
And become the biggest thing since KFRC. I mean, you're the number one afternoon guy. I'm driving in San Francisco and I see Jeff McNEAL on billboards everywhere.
Wow.
Holy moly.
Yeah,
Jeff,
that was
and that's a big city.
Yeah.
We're talking about San Francisco.
Yeah.
And you're everywhere.
Well, how that happened was I was working at KIIS-FM, as we talked about, and I was doing weekends primarily. And Chris Roberts, who was one of the guys that got fired by Frankie Crocker at KUTE 102, he and I remained friends. And he went to program KGGI 99.7 or 99.9. I forget whatever it is.
I worked with Chris either at 99.1 or
99.1. Yeah. And he was a character. But anyway, he asked me if I wanted to come down and do the morning show. And I thought, wow, what a great opportunity, because I'd always wanted to do mornings. I hadn't yet, but I really wanted to do that. So I went to San Bernardino and I started doing mornings at 99.1. And increased the ratings by like two full points in the 10 months that I was there. And I remember going in, and I had a good It's funny, I can't get into too much history here, but I had worked with the GM at that station in Oxnard at KCY that we talked about earlier, Don Davis. And I left that station to start working in LA. And I gave my 2 weeks notice. Just to, the proper thing to do. Well, KCY, Don Davis, I came back from a weekend at my parents in Pasadena. I drove all the way up to Ventura or Oxnard to do my shift. I walk in and PD says, "Oh, hey, thanks, but you're out, and you don't have to do any more shifts. You're done." And I go, wait a minute. I was prepared to do a couple more weeks. I'm a pro. I'm not gonna. No, don't worry about it. And I said, I'm not getting paid. And he said, severance? No. So now I'm really pissed off. I'm thinking, here I drive 2 hours to do my shift, to show up and do the right thing, and now they're telling me, you're done. So I walk into the GM's office, who was Don Davis. I said, what's going on? Oh, well, it's our policy. We just cut somebody a check and, let you go. I said, well, I didn't get a check. He goes, oh. I said, you know what? Your policy sucks. And I left, and Jim Barker was the PD. He was running after me with an handful of albums. Well, let me give you some albums. I said, get out of my way before I run you over. I was just pissed off. I don't want your albums. So now we flash forward a few years. Now Don Davis, the same GM who unceremoniously cut me loose from KECY when I went to work in LA, He's the GM in San Bernardino, Riverside. And, oh, hey, Jeff, good to see you. And, I didn't say anything. I didn't dredge up the old hostility I felt for how that was handled. But I did my thing. And we got along fine. We had a very nice relationship, and we got along great. Well, I sent an air check. My sister was working in an art gallery on the ground floor of the building that KYUU was in. KYUU was owned and operated by NBC.
Right. And
she said, you ought to send your tape here because I think you'd be really good on the station. And I'm thinking, San Francisco, NBC, what chance do I have? But, why not? Send them an air check, send them a note, see what happens. Unbeknownst to me, Mike Novak, who was the PD, flew down and listened to me doing my morning show in San Bernardino without me knowing it. And this is kind of one of those fateful moments. I remember that I was playing a song by Paul McCartney that's pretty obscure by today's standards. It's called Take It Away or something. And it wasn't that great of a song. But there's a verse in the song that says, you never know who may be listening to you. And it repeats a couple times. I remember doing my show that morning and thought, I'm not going to throw it away. I'm just going to really try to really kick butt because, you never really do know. And that morning I get a call. Hey, Jeff, Mike Novak from KYUU. Oh, how's it going, Mike? Hey, listen, I've been listening to your show and I was wondering if you would like to fly up and discuss possibly working with us. Okay. So I flew up and long story short, I was offered the afternoon drive. They got rid of Tom Parker, who was doing it. He'd been there for a long time. And remember I walked in and
that was a big thing at the time.
Oh, man, I was like dying and going to heaven. I was 22 years old. And I walk in and Rick Shaw's across the glass. His real name was Hugh Silvis, but he was a mainstay in San Francisco for years and years. And I remember listening to him when I'd come up to visit my grandparents who lived in San Francisco. My family's from there originally, my mother's side of the family. And my father's side was from Oakland. So there's a rich history in my family with the Bay Area.
Wow.
So I remember listening to them on the radio. And I remember just looking through the glass. And it was not a combo. We had engineers, just like back in the old days. There was engineers doing all the NABIT engineers doing all the controls and pushing the buttons.
So all the time you're on the air at KYUU, you have an engineer?
Not the whole 6 years, but the first 2 or 3 years. Yeah. I'd be on the other side of the glass going, that kind of stuff.
How cool is that?
It was cool. It was yes and no, because I was used to running my own board and doing my own thing.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden not having that control and having to tell somebody, okay, stack up this effect, this one, we're going to do it in this order and do this. So it was.
So it threw you off at first, I guess, I would imagine.
Just
throw me off.
Yeah, just a little bit. But I got used to it. And then, it was just kind of like, wow, this is really the big time. It was kind of neat. And I made a lot of good friends, and it was a neat station. So that's how that happened.
And the top of the hour always had the NBC chimes.
Yeah, they let me do basically a morning show and afternoon drive, and that's why we had such phenomenal success.
And everyone knew your name. It was an amazing time in radio. Radio still mattered. Personality still mattered.
Mm.
People would have you on all over San Francisco. And I didn't even know you were doing afternoons there until my wife and I were visiting. And I said, my God, this man's a star here. He's a star. Everyone knows his name. I always knew he was going to be a star. I thought it was going to be in LA. I thought you were going to be on one of the.
I would like to have. That was my hope, but it just never.
But
really
San Francisco is just as big. I mean, it
was fine. Yeah, I didn't mind working for NBC in San Francisco. It was good, and we had a great time. It was a great staff. The thing I loved most of it, in fact, that was the best job I ever had in radio. That was the zenith of my career.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and it was. I worked with some wonderfully talented professionals, and the coolest thing about it was everyone was very secure in their own heads, and there was no ego, there was no backbiting, none of the kind of crap you deal with, from time to time. No one was out to get you. It was like everyone really respected and admired each other and supported each other, and it was just a wonderful working environment.
So it was a good time in San Francisco. You just had a blast.
I did. It was a good time for a long time. The last year wasn't as fun, and I decided that it was time for me to go. I really wanted to do morning somewhere, and I didn't sign the last. They wanted to re-up my contract for another year with a modest raise, and I kind of stunned them when I said, "Gee, I'm really sorry, but I think I'm just comfortable continuing under the terms of the current contract." And because I wanted to be able to have the flexibility to leave. I'd been offered a morning show in Philadelphia while I was there that I turned down for various reasons. So I wanted to have the flexibility of being able to do something else. Well, the station was being sold. NBC was selling their entire radio division, which was a real sad shame, to Emmis. They were from Indiana. And so I really wanted to get fired because I wanted to collect my union severance, because after 6 years, it was a nice chunk.
Right.
Well, like I said, the last year was rough. They brought in a PD who was the music director at the DC station. Nice guy, beautiful guy, loved the guy, but he had no idea what he was doing. And he was just a horrible program director. And it was just a mess. The GM had been the sales manager. He moved up the ladder. Again, sweet guy, lovely guy. He came up with the idea that the station call letters KYUU spelled Q, if you say the word. So after all these years of the station identity being 99.7 KYUU, we're now going to be the Q with a rainbow big letter Q on the billboards. So again, I wanted to get fired, but I had to be careful that I did it the right way, so I didn't get fired for just cause.
Right, very carefully.
Yeah, and how I did it, because I knew the guys from Emmis were listening and monitoring the station. So I did two things. I made jokes about Indiana and the new guys taking over the station, blah 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 blah. I didn't care, But the other thing I did is every once in a while, instead of saying 99.7 the Q, I'd say, "Hey, listen to 99.7 the Q. The Q.
Fuck you."
That's what it sounds like. Yeah. It's just all in the inflection. I'm still saying the Q, but it's how you say it.
Right.
99.7 the Q.
The intonation in your voice, right?
Yeah. And I knew I had the recordings, so if they ever said, "Oh, he was saying fuck you," well, no, I was saying the Q.
Thank you.
Yeah. So long story short, I got fired. They paid me off tens of thousands in severance, and I was thrilled. They were, "Oh, gee, Jeff, we're so sorry we have to put you." I said, "Well, am I getting my pay?" Yeah. I said, "Well, don't feel bad. I just hope things work out as well for you guys when it's your turn, because when these guys take over, you may think you're going to be here, but you're not going to be here either. So good luck. Thank you very much. It's been fun." Of course, they all got fired.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So anyway, but after that, radio was changing. Deregulation happened. I had been such kind of a brash, cocky force in San Francisco at that station. I would call the competing stations and put them on the air and ridicule them. And, I probably made a lot of enemies. I just didn't care. I just wanted to have fun and entertain my audience at any cost to myself.
And you did.
I did, but what I also did was made sure that I wasn't going to get picked up by any other station, because I was kind of a hot potato a little bit, because I could be controversial and did a few things that, in retrospect.
At the time, it was very entertaining.
Yeah, and that's all that mattered at the time. Yeah.
And you don't have radio's no longer entertaining.
No.
That's why it's no longer a factor. That's
Right.
why people don't listen to the radio anymore.
Yeah.
No matter how many people are going to tell you, "Oh, it's still alive. It's still there." And no, it's not.
Video killed the radio star, and Napster killed the music industry.
It's true.
Yeah, because as soon as people could start downloading music for free, who needs the radio and who needs to spend a fortune on vinyl? So yeah.
But you can be proud that you were very entertaining.
And that's very kind of you to say.
That played a big part in radio. Legend Jeff McNEAL, thanks for spending so much time. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing your stories. And I would like to invite you back because we have so much more to talk about.
I do appreciate the sentiments. And most of all, I appreciate that you and I are still friends after all these years.
Me too.
We've had different careers. Our paths have gone different directions. We haven't really stayed in touch per se, although we did reconnect on Facebook about 10 years ago, I'm guessing, and we communicate from time to time. But as I'm getting older, I'm finding that that's really the important thing to me, is connecting with people that I knew when I was younger and just let them know how much I appreciate them, who they are, and how much their friendship means to me. And that goes for you. Absolutely.
As to you as well. And promise you'll come back on the show.
I'd be delighted to. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Jeff McNEAL, take care of yourself and talk soon.
Thanks, Dave.
Great catching up with an old buddy, Jeff McNEAL. And of course, Jeff McNeil's voice can still be heard on commercials and TV stations all across America and worldwide, for all I know. Great talking to Jeff, and I hope he does return to the show. We're going to take a couple of weeks off with Radio Memories, but we'll be back on, September 29th with a very special guest, another person who I consider a radio legend, Ted Ziegenbusch. What a great career Ted has. He had over 20 years at LA's Coast 103. So Ted Ziegenbusch will be on with us on Wednesday, September 29th. So I hope you join us when we're back with more Radio Memories.